Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where I create art and talk about whatever I want. I'm Hawkblood or Laura and I hope you all are doing okay. It's been a while since I did my last sketchbook session. It's just been a lot the past months. Starting off with working in the botanical garden, which was a lot of fun for me so far. It had a drastic turn during March already. The whole situation at work is overall very complicated, so I try to break it down into its core issues. Also to keep some information private, but yeah, I was forced to overwork myself a lot. I had to do tasks that I wasn't qualified for. I had to stand in for workers that were sick or on vacation for multiple weeks, which I also wasn't allowed to do. Basically, every paragraph in my contract that would protect me as a voluntary worker was forcefully violated. I tried to speak up against that, what turned into colleagues of mine that are known to be difficult in social situations. But especially one colleague started to sabotage and telling lies about me for speaking up against them. So that sucked, and during that overflow of work and sabotaging me, we suffered a severe family loss at the end of May, shortly before my birthday, which was a very drastic cut into our lives, especially the ones of my aunt and mother, which just added itself on top of stress from work. I myself wasn't really the closest with the person who'd passed, so the death itself wasn't the hardest part for me to emotionally manage. It was more the suffering of my relatives that made me feel sad and heavy. The cherry on top, however, was when I figured out that the application deadline for art university was reached and that I won't be able to go to university within the next year. The date that was given to me by the university course guidance service was false. The real deadline was already way back in the past. Realizing that I am forced to work in shit jobs without qualification for another year, on top of family death and emotional abuse at work, it pushed me right back into more severe depression. I was already struggling with more frequent depressive episodes since November again, but then it really got so bad that I was also taking sick leave for multiple weeks. However, during my depressive cycles in early spring, something changed, and that is my perception of drugs. And that is what I want to talk about today. It's a very interesting development that is still progressing, which is why I had to rewrite the outline of this video like 3 times now, because there are just constantly things changing and it's already hard to talk about this topic as it is, so talking about it in English is even harder, so bear with me. Yeah, my perception changed, which is very drastic for me, because I used to be a very religiously straight edge person. I used to judge substance usage to the point of judging people for using painkillers or meds in general. I despised anyone who used any type of chemical to change their mental or physical sensations. I was so anti-drugs that I even did the extremely stupid mistake for shaming a person and blaming them for the using of their dad, which is fucking uncool. Don't do that, please. I cut people out of my life for drinking or smoking. I know that I used to have this mindset to protect myself, maybe in a more destructive way than it should, but it came from a place of fear and a wish to protect myself, because I unfortunately had very explicit experiences with drug usage in a very quite early time of my teen years. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I myself wasn't using. I witnessed close people using in a very unsafe way, and that traumatized me for a very long time, till even now, which is the root for that very extreme anti-feeling I had towards drugs and substance usage. It's quite ironic that I used to have such apathy towards consumers despite writing compassionate stories about drug addiction and rehab during that time. I started writing Liberation Day I think actually before these extreme anti-feelings came up. Psychologically, it does make sense that I used my story writing to cope with that trauma and fear, but yeah, I just want to get across that I used to be very, 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 very anti-drugs. And I used to hold up that mindset for a very long time as well. Slowly but surely, I understood that using and especially drug abuse isn't a problem. It is a problem, but it is more of a symptom than an actual inducing problem, if that makes sense. I felt more and more compassion towards people who use, but that extreme repulsion was still there. And what is also quite important is that I started to build up this fantasy in my head where me and all of my friends and people I know are just very straight edge people, basically assuming that they have the exact same feelings and views on drugs as me. I tell you this because that has also an effect on the feelings that I have now. Hey guys, editing me here. I unfortunately forgot to expand on this topic later in the video, so I will just do it now. So yeah, as I just mentioned, I built up this mindset that everyone around me had the same beliefs and views on drugs as me. And this mindset was basically crumbled within the past year. I was just, believing that drug usage is something like at the edge of society, like it's something quote unquote special, something unusual. And within the past year, I noticed that, or I've been told that everyone around me is in fact using, and that I am the exception. That was really, really hard to realize that, I am the only one who does not have any experience with drug using. And that made me feel not only like betrayed, it also made me feel extremely lonely and as if there is something wrong with me. And that feeling continued and also fed into the feelings I have or had right now. So just imagine this realization of feeling alone, being different and all of that. It kind of sucked, but back to the video. But I reached a point where I was fine with people using drugs. That includes drinking alcohol. Or at least I told myself that I should be okay with it while being repulsed of the idea of using myself or being surrounded by people in active using. I still stood very close to the straight edge principles, and that is the state I was in for the last 2 or 3 years until a few months ago, where things drastically changed. And before I get into the event that is the active course for the rapid change, I want to make sure that I don't want to blame any of the involved people. I brought myself into a situation where I should have stated my boundaries, which I usually do. I tell certain people not to smoke, especially weed around me, which is usually respected. But in that certain situation, I didn't state my boundaries. I am at no place to blame the person who brought me into this situation because I dearly wanted to participate. I asked to be in this get-together without getting into too much detail. And I am not to blame the person who triggered the feelings I have now because they couldn't know. No one could have known that this situation would cause me to feel the way I do now. No one is at fault in this situation, and I want to state that clear. So back in March, I ended up in a little get-together where I felt very at home and very cozy, and it was overall just super sweet. At one point, one person started to build a joint, which they can do, happened a lot before. I just didn't want to passively consume cannabis on that evening, which I wanted to voice but didn't because I felt like I am not in a powerful enough position to tell the person to stop and restrict them in their actions due to me being at their home. So that person continued, and I started to feel more and more uncomfortable with the situation, but I didn't say anything. I fell into a very, very scary mind place while I watched a person grind the cannabis and roll the joint. I got these very extreme racing thoughts of, they're just rolling a cigarette, it's just a cigarette, it's just a cigarette, it's just a fucking cigarette. And it made me believe that it was, in fact, just a cigarette. And I know I had this mental reaction because of the trauma I endured. It was a way to protect myself because that situation I was in was also very similar to the situation that caused me that trauma in the first place. But yeah, the person smoked the weed. I got passively high, which I didn't want. The person who was there with me also got uncomfortable by that, which caused us to leave. Important is that on that evening, I got involuntarily high. Since I have the strong anti-feelings against using, I can get very extreme, aggressive, compulsive thoughts, which is why I usually try to avoid situations like this, not only due to the emotional distress, but also because I know consuming with others passively is not good for me. I walked out of this situation high, confronted with my trauma, and the next morning I felt a craving. And maybe that whole story sounds not as dramatic in a retelling, but feeling this craving after years of staying away and trying everything to avoid a situation like that, you know, it kind of sucks. That feeling didn't really improve due to the change in law in Germany. If you didn't know, cannabis was legalized in April here in Germany. And yeah, my mental state was more and more getting worse in the following weeks, to the point that I even considered harming myself in a more severe way, if you understand what I mean by that. It was manageable, but the intrusive thoughts and impulses were there. And these impulses grabbed onto that craving to be high again. And it resulted in me having very obsessive thoughts about wrecking myself with drugs. Like, I had these feelings of wanting to fill the void inside me with chemically induced altered states, no matter what they bring. Like, I just wanted to feel something again, and knowing that there are things out there strong enough to actually cause me to feel stuff was very attractive in my depressive state. And these thoughts weren't just about cannabis. Additionally, due to my art block and fear of losing my ability to do art and losing my imagination and the long desire to make more fucked up art, I formed an interest in psychedelics. Due to the lack of time and energy I had due to my work overload that caused me to be unable to do anything besides working and keeping myself alive, the impulse of doing stimulants was also appearing and being quite prominent. Also, there was this thought of, if I wreck myself with drugs, I will finally get the help and therapy for my mental struggles, because then, and only then, I am in a quote-unquote bad enough state that I am allowed for therapy, or that I am worthy enough of therapy. Which I know is dumb, but if you're in an active depressive episodes, this thought chain does make sense. I know I am strong enough to stay away from following the urges to go out and buy myself harder substances, but the thoughts are there and they are scary. Another issue I face now is that I'm actively triggered again. As mentioned earlier, I experienced quite a trauma if it comes to using, and that trauma evolves mainly around cannabis. I am now again in a place where I get severe panic attacks when either smelling more skunky, hazy type of weed or when seeing people consume. And that makes it even harder for me to navigate life and bigger social events, because now, with the legalization in Germany, people are allowed to consume in public. And it already happened multiple times that people consumed in public, and I had severe panic attacks as a reaction due to that. I was thinking a lot about how to fight this panic while also working against the self-destructive urges I have surrounding about drugs. I also talked to a very close friend that has been through addiction, and I myself agreed on trying to consume cannabis myself in a safe way, because I am aware that cannabis is not all bad. Despite my impulses and repulsion, I am actually very pro-cannabis as a medical tool for mental and physical well-being. And this is also the way how I want to use it to just form a healthier relationship with the usage that isn't just always negative, abuse, addiction, yada yada yada. Maybe if I make positive and safe experiences, I can get past that trauma, which would be awesome, because then I could attend social gatherings again without fearing that I will witness people smoking weed, and in result I will get severe panic attacks that I have to recover from multiple days. So it would be quite beneficial if it works like that. So due to this plan, I am now growing my own CBD and low THC plants, because I love caring for my plants, as you know, and that is already a very great step to form a positive connection. I want to consume the plants either as tea or edibles, and I will actually consume my first self-made edibles at the day of recording this. I will later go and make some pancakes with chocolate canna butter with the friend I mentioned earlier, who will take care of me in case something happens. So I don't know yet how things will go. Only editing me will know, and will either be devastated about how I am talking about things right now, or I will be happy about the effects it had. The only thing about this is there's just this thought in my head remaining about this constant clash of the urge and craving to use and my previous mindset where I judge people for using. So I am quote unquote becoming what I used to hate, as hard as that sounds, and that kinda sucks to accept and find peace with. I hope that getting a safe connection towards cannabis helps these negative and destructive feelings, and we will see how that will turn out. Wish me luck. Anyways, today I drew once again my OC Robin. You already know them from previous videos. This little illustration is a mess, I can tell you. While I really like the end result, I struggled with the process a lot due to me deciding to record at night, and my desk lamp is overall very nice, but when I am recording I already have to work on an angle because my tripod is very special. It's a DIY tripod because I was too lazy to buy a real one, and it kinda sucks to work with it, but it does the job. So working with gouache on an angle with bright light, it creates a reflection. And I think you could even see that in some parts of the recordings. What I want to say is that I constantly worked against the reflection. So the whole time I wasn't really able to see what I was doing. And for that, I quite like the end result. Though I need to admit that I fixed some areas, and especially the hair, off camera because I didn't like it at first. Yeah, I hope you like this little piece of Robin as well. Tell me if you have mixed feelings about substance usage as well. What are your experiences with this topic overall? I think it's very interesting to see your opinions, also because I think there is a lot of stigma surrounding drug usage. I'm sorry if this video was a bit chaotic. It's just a lot on my head in regards of this topic, and I have trouble sorting my thoughts about it. So I am sorry again. If you want to see more videos, I hope to be able to do more uplifting videos again in the future, but I think we also need more honest and realistic, serious videos on this channel as well. It's the good mix that does it. But yeah, subscribe if you want to see more. Until then, stay extra safe and of course, hydrated.